Hi, this is Chris with Audio Discovery. Well, recently I had a comment on one of my videos asking about how I would process vocals with the LA2A or 1176 emulations that are in Pro Channel. And to be honest with you, I'm not the guy to ask, but I'm going to give an answer anyways. Okay, so here we have the PC2A leveler by, that is essentially a LA2A. Now, when I think about how to process vocals, my first thought is, how is the vocal being surrounded by the music? So the vocals are either going to be on top of the mix, they're going to be either in the mix or within the mix. And you will have to take cues from a few different things. First and foremost, the actual music that's being sung to, right? The accompanied music. So I'm going to process vocals much differently using the LA2A or the 1176. That's going to be processed differently depending on the material. So if it's a song from like a pop, say for instance, like a pop song, and the vocals are supposed to be very forward and clear. So I'm thinking, a female pop vocalist that is being featured, and all of the words need to be heard, and everything. Or like, say, for instance, a pop country vocalist, the lyrical content typically tends to be most important in that case. And this is a very boring answer, but when you have a production that you need to add vocals to, or you're mixing the vocals into it, you're not, so first and foremost, I would hope that the vocalist had good mic technique, because the proximity effect on some of the vocal like mics that they're going to be using is going to have a big deal, or there's going to be a big deal. So if there's a lot of presence in some parts and there's a lack of presence in some other parts on the vocal side, you won't be able to massage that in through the mix. That's essentially the same as having distortion on a guitar versus having a clean guitar. You're not going to be able to pull that presence out with EQ, or you can try, but realistically, the hope is that the vocalist did what they could do from a presence perspective with the mic technique that they were using at the time of recording. And dynamically, that texture doesn't get affected with any compression. What compression will do is the rhythmic nature of the vocals will be highlighted, right? So essentially what you're doing is you're creating this environment vocally for the performance. And so typically your LA2A is the best tool for that. And what you would do is, so let's take this example for instance. Okay. This song, this is a song by this band called Gravediggers, I think, or a band called Hollow State, and it's called yeah, I don't know. Anyways, okay, so what I want to do is this is the song that is going behind the vocal, right? I'm just gonna play the first measures, or a couple of measures or so. Let's just make sure that this doesn't. Okay, so you get a sense of what to expect Actually, let's play this part. So that's what the singer's going to sing over. And what's needed is to understand that there's space, right? So you want to think of the vocalist in either in front of the band. You don't want them on top of the band. And there's a difference between being in front of the band and being on top of the band. Again, these are sort of characteristics in the way that I think about them versus somebody else, right? So, take this with a grain of salt. Being in front of the band means that the band is still surrounding the sound. Being on top of the band is that the singer just sounds displaced from the band, right? So you want a characteristic of the vocal that is present, it's sibilant, but not overly sibilant, and you can hear all of the words. Okay, so I'm going to play the lead vocal part, and this is clean. I took all of the effects off, and what this does, you can listen to the vocal and get a sense of what you need to do in order to get the idea of the that rhythmic kind of punch character. And we're going to play around with the LA2A, or I'm sorry, the 1176 emulation for that.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we'll build them up.
Okay, so realistically, that's pretty nicely like compressed. It's not overly sibilant. I'm not throwing a bunch of like de-essers in there. I don't think I need to at this point. So let's see how the LA2A is going to be used in this scenario. Okay. 1176. Okay, so first and foremost, when I engage it, I want to see that the gain reduction is being used, and in the process, I'm going to sort of bring the output level down, push the input level up to see the gain reduction. I understand this is mixing with your eyes a little bit, but that's okay. The attack, so typically on an 1176, you would turn the attack up to 7, right? In this case, you would pull the attack down because it's in milliseconds. All right, so the attack and the release are going to be your friends here. And you want the attack and release to pump the vocals a little bit. We're going to do it so that it's very extreme and then pull back on it. You want to hear it first and then dial it back so that it sounds kind of what you want to have it sound like.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, so let's level match, okay? So that we're going to bypass that. So we're going to make sure that they are... So we heard the compression, the attack and the release. I put them pretty aggressively and pulled the output down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the levels are matched to compare. So let's hear it.
I don't believe there's nothing to see.
Okay, so it's louder, so we have to pull it back.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't.
Okay, so let's pull this down a little more, but I think we're about...
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking.
Okay, so just a little bit more, and then we're good. Okay, so now we're going to listen to the artifacts of that compression and see how we like it. And we're comparing it to the original to see if it's better or not as good. And what we want to make sure is that it's an improvement. That way we can move forward from there. Because I'm thinking of this is sort of a baseline. Okay.
I don't believe there's nothing to... I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
So I get a little bit of excitement out of it. I'm gonna see what the let's look at the VU meter. And the reason we're looking at the VU meter is to see if we're evaluating something that's at the same level, if it's a little bit louder or if it's softer. And what I'm looking for is if it's softer in volume but sounds the same amount of excitement, then I know we're doing something right.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
I mean, that's pretty controlled, and I think that sounds good, right? That means that as we add a little bit of volume, we're not fooling ourselves that it's a better take because it's a little bit louder.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay. So then, to me, that sounds pretty good. I have the attack all the way up, as fast as it can be. I set the release around 100 milliseconds. That's kind of just a rule of thumb for me. If I wanted this to sort of be a little bit, let's make this a little more extreme.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
I mean, realistically, that's not bad. I mean, you hear the artifacts of compression, and what you're listening for is kind of like a really minute sense of it getting louder and softer and the middle of the words.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, and he's already pretty compressed as it is, so this is just sort of adding a little bit more flavor. Let's make it slower and hear what that sounds like.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Versus...
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, they sound really, really similar. But I think it sounds better than the original. I think it sounds a little more lively than the original. And that is for the material that we're listening for. That's what we're looking at. I don't have the rest of this mixed. I sort of pulled this is an old session, and I pulled all of the levels around just so that I can make this video. So I didn't set any of the levels for any of the other stuff. So it's going to sound atrocious and we won't be able to hear it along with the music. But at this point, now that I've made this change, I would set the level so that I could hear it within the music that I've started the mix with, right? And not a mix that I'm going to be, consider final. I mean, I'm going to make adjustments to things like guitars and whatnot just to make sure that they don't go over and beyond where the vocals are, particularly if they're in the center, because the vocals, belong in the center. Okay, so then let's look at the LA2A emulation. So the way that I would use this in this scenario, again, so with the L1176, you're looking at excitement. You're looking at getting a little bit more of a hearing the artifacts of compression. With the LA2A, it wasn't necessary. I mean, the artifacts that you're going to get are not as present in this one. Let's try to get as much of the artifacts of compression as we can by increasing peak reduction. But realistically, the LA2A, I think, is overall been sort of more of like a smoothing compressor that allows not for so much excitement as much as it gets the vocals to sound just really balanced, really easy, just like in a sweet spot, and more for like volume control and presence control, but not so much for that excitement and compressor characteristics. So we're going to do a few things here. So let's listen to what it does.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, so smooth. Let's kick it in.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, that just made it quieter, so let's put it up.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Oh, you know what happened is is, let's take that. All right, so
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
okay, so realistically, you don't hear too much difference, right? Because it's just a smoothing compressor. And the reason why this gets smooth like that is because it's got an optical circuit that kind of it's self-adjusting as things get like louder, then it'll compress harder. As things get softer, it'll compress less. So things like a fixed threshold, this threshold moves based on how loud the vocals or the signal that goes into it. That's what they call program dependence. It's basically just giving you more or less of a compression function rather than being sort of one thing, right? So that's why this is smooth, because it adjusts. It's like shock absorption, essentially. You're listening to audio shock absorption with an LA2A, right?
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
All right, let's pull the peak reduction down and let's pull the gain down.
I don't believe that.
All right, so does this continue?
I don't.
I don't know why we have.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking.
All right.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
All right, let's
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop.
Again, you have a little bit of a compression artifact, and also too, they've modeled this with circuits, right? So the circuits are essentially saying, they're going to impart a little bit of a harmonic characteristic.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Right? So you get that.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
You can tell that kind of is chewing on the louder notes a little bit.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, so that's a little louder, so let's pull this down.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
All right, let's see.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
I mean, you can tell that LA or the 1176 sounds a lot more exciting.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay. The other thing is that it's a lot more controlled as well. So this one, it's a little actually, we pulled back.
I don't believe there's nothing to see.
So it's.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't.
Okay, let's try that.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
All right.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, so now we're listening to it so much that you're starting to kind of get a sense of like, well, one sounds pretty much the same as the other one. So what am I listening for in this? There's a when the vocal starts to let me get the lyrics again.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, so when he starts to go, I don't believe there's nothing to see, right? So going from don't believe, right? So there's like this kind of percussion, like a percussiveness to that. I don't believe there's nothing to see, right? So you're trying to get a little more like kind of punch out of the don't believe, not, like those emphasis, right? So I feel like in the 1176 I get a little bit more of the emphasis, and then as when he starts saying, so I can't stop looking up, I feel like the 1176 pulls those notes up a little bit more, or a little bit more forward, or a little bit more intelligible. I feel like the 1170 or the LA2A tends to sort of step back a little bit on it. And those are the kinds of things that I'm listening for when I'm listening to these two compressors going. This one is giving me, this presence boost, this effect on the notes, on the individual emphasis of each of the words. Whereas with the LA2A, I'm not getting that same kind of emphasis, right? So that's something that I really want to, that I want to work with. So now that we kind of made a choice between the two compressors, you can actually stack the two compressors. So if you're getting, say, for instance, you got some character and you want to just sort of balance out the character because it's a little too much. So let's listen to the rest of the phrase and then see if we want to sort of just mellow out some of like the notes that are a little louder. And then we can just sort of kind of cut those down a little bit.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up.
Okay, we know that one.
Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up. We fill faults with concrete, line up on broken feet, never wondering why when we look to the sky, nothing seems for real.
Okay, so let's see. We're gonna mess with this a little bit so that we're getting the two compressors to sort of complement each other. So you're going to get the bite out of the 1176, and then that's going to go into the LA2A, and that's just going to bring the bite a little louder and a little bit more forward, and that's what we're looking for here.
Walls so high to the sky.
Okay.
Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough.
Okay, and what I'm doing right now is I'm reading the VU meter just to give me a sense of when am I needing to sort of give a little bit more of a compression artifact versus not, right? I want to make sure that I'm not over compressing it, but also I want to make sure that I'm starting to like understand what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm going back and forth with the amount of peak reduction so that I'm just kind of measuring, can I hear it? Can I not hear it? Can I hear it? And then at some point, I can sort of dial it back to being very smooth, but still like a little bit of a presence boost. Trying to not make it a volume boost, mind you. We want to keep the volume under that negative 12 dB range, because volume just means that we like it better, right? So I'm trying to just make it more of a characteristic rather than it be a volume change.
Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough.
Right.
Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough. Walls so high to the sky, but it is. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up.
Okay, so let's hear how that phrase is with the compression in, and then with the total compression out.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up. We fill faults with concrete, line up on broken feet, never wondering why when we look to the sky, nothing seems for real.
Okay. Very, very smooth. Like, if you look at that waveform, it's going to be really, really, like, very tight, very compressed. Okay, so this is with everything out. I took the whole PC Pro channel out. Okay.
I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up. We fill faults with concrete, line up on broken feet, never wondering why when we look to the sky, nothing seems for real. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up. We fill faults with concrete, line up on broken feet, never wondering why when we look to the sky, nothing seems for real. I don't believe there's nothing to see, so I can't stop looking up. Walls so high to the sky, but it isn't enough, so we build them up. We fill faults with concrete, line up on broken feet, never wondering why when we look to the sky, nothing seems for real.
Okay, so that to me is going to be pretty useful, because I want to be able for the lower notes to be more present. I want those higher notes to be kind of come down a little bit, but I don't want the excitement out of it. I want to have the same amount of excitement, but just not as like, I want for there to be a really, really even dynamic range from all of the notes, from the whole thing. And that way it'll sound like all of the other compressed material, your bass, your guitars, the percussion is very spiky and transient, but that's what we want. We want it to be very transient focused. And then you have the, any of the other elements, they all have a certain placement in the mix. And if you have a really dynamic signal, then you get things that poke out at you. And I want the listener to not have that, the presence of the vocal be changing so much. I want it to be pretty smooth having like those punchy characteristics, but the characteristics of the punch are sort of more blended in with the rest of the vocal performance, as well as having, so the volume is controlled. And then because the idea is that I want the listener to crank the volume of this and enjoy the music, and not have certain notes just be piercing and resonant, because that is when we decide that something sounds amateurish, right? And even I would say I've heard some professional mixes where there was a little less focus on detailing that compression on the vocals, and I just get bombarded with like this sort of presence change of the vocal performance, and it's overwhelming, and I don't enjoy it. So anyways, I'm going to end it there. I don't think this was too meandering. I think that this was a pretty decent or to give a pretty decent understanding of the two compressors, how I would use them, and sort of how I would use them in line. There's also other things that you can do with the compressors, such as add EQ, and get the EQ to sort of give you kind of like certain, not like a D. It's like you can focus the compression on certain frequencies, so that the compressor will react to that certain frequency, and it gives you a little bit more control over where you want the vocals to sort of have a little bit more control particularly if there's like a couple of notes that just sort of are a little too resonant. You can fix that with the EQ going in before the compressor, and obviously you're going to need to add a EQ after the compressor to sort of pull that frequency back in. So anyways, yeah, thanks for the interest. I'm glad that hopefully this is useful. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. All right, thanks a lot.